The early morning fog had enveloped the cypress trees, mirroring the spectres of Louisiana's bygone era, cloaking Belmont Plantation in a dreamlike shroud that seemed to murmur of secrets best left undisturbed. The year was 1847, and the expansive estate sprawled across thousands of acres of rich delta soil, its grand mansion with its white columns standing as a testament to prosperity amassed through the exploitation of enslaved individuals. Meline Darcy stood by the tall windows of her late husband's study, now her domain by virtue of her widowhood. At 38 years of age, she possessed a beauty that had been refined rather than diminished by her sorrow. High cheekbones, sculpted by grief, steely grey eyes that had learned to show no leniency, and raven hair pulled back in a severe coiffure indicative of her unyielding self-control. The black silk of her morning attire rustled as she turned from the window, the sound piercing the suffocating quiet of the chamber. "Mrs. Darcy," came the tentative voice of Ezra, the aged house slave who had served the family for more than 2 decades. His weathered hands trembled faintly as he presented a silver salver laden with the day's dispatches. "The overseer requests an audience regarding the cotton yield, madam." Meline's gaze swept over the man with the frigid efficiency of one accustomed to viewing people as mere assets rather than sentient beings. "Inform Mr. Bogard I shall see him once I have addressed matters of greater urgency," she responded, her voice bearing the cultivated cadence of New Orleans gentry overlaid with a new-found air of command. "And Ezra, send Claraara to me at once." The old man's eyes flickered with what might have been apprehension, yet he knew discretion was the better part of valor when facing the mistress of Belmont. "Yes, madam," he murmured, inclining his head as he departed the study. Madeline returned to the mahogany desk that had once belonged to her husband Charles. 6 months had elapsed since the ravages of yellow fever had claimed him, leaving her to manage not only the immense plantation, but also their 2 sons, Phipe, aged 22, and Henri, aged 19. Both young men had inherited their father's refined features and gentle temperament, attributes that had served Charles admirably in the social circles of New Orleans, but which proved woefully insufficient for the unforgiving realities of plantation life. The soft tread of footsteps upon the Persian rug announced Claraara's arrival. Meline looked up to see the young woman poised in the doorway, her bearing erect despite the circumstances of her subjugation. Claraara appeared to be around 20 years of age, her complexion the hue of café au lait, and her eyes held a depth that Meline found both captivating and disconcerting. Unlike the other enslaved women on the estate, Claraara carried herself with a quiet self-respect that bordered on defiance, though she assiduously avoided any overt acts of insubordination. "You sent for me, Mrs. Darcy?" Claraara's voice was soft, yet distinct, educated, a testament to her upbringing within the household, rather than in the fields. Meline studied the young woman for a considerable interval, her mind assessing with the same meticulousness she applied to crop projections and market valuations. Claraara was clad in a simple grey frock that, despite its plainness, could not conceal her inherent grace. Her hair was neatly plaited and pinned, and her hands, though roughened by labour, possessed an elegant expressiveness. "Claraara," Meline began, rising from behind the desk to pace slowly across the room. "You have resided in this house since your childhood. You comprehend the delicate standing of our family." "Yes, madam," Claraara replied, though a weariness flickered in her eyes, a detail Meline chose to overlook. "My sons," Meline continued, her tone sharpening, "are at a pivotal juncture in their development. They require guidance in matters that I, as their mother, cannot provide. They must grasp the natural order of things, the proper dynamic between master and property. Claraara's hands clenched subtly at her sides, yet she remained silent. Meline halted directly before the young woman, close enough to perceive the faint tremor in her respiration. You will attend to their needs, Claraara. All of their needs. You will instruct them in the art of command, and you will learn the imperative of obedience without question. The words lingered in the air like a death knell. Claraara's composed expression remained unaltered, but a subtle shift occurred in her eyes, a glint of steel that Meline misinterpreted as acquiescence. "Do you comprehend my request?" Meline pressed, her voice lowering to a mere whisper. "I understand perfectly, Mrs. Darcy," Claraara responded, her tone so steady it possessed a musical quality. "You wish me to assist your sons in becoming the men you deem they should be?" "Precisely," Meline smiled, a chilling expression that did not reach her eyes. "You shall commence this evening. Phipe will expect you in his chambers following dinner." As Claraara curtsied and turned to depart, Meline experienced a surge of triumph. She had resolved two predicaments with a single decree. Her sons would learn to assert their dominion, and Claraara would be reminded of her subordinate station in the natural hierarchy. What Meline failed to perceive was that she had just ignited a fuse that would ultimately engulf all that she held dear. The remainder of the day passed in a whirlwind of plantation administration. Meline conferred with the overseer concerning the cotton harvest, scrutinized the household ledgers, and oversaw the preparations for the evening meal. Yet beneath her veneer of efficiency, she found herself contemplating Claraara's reaction, or rather, the conspicuous absence of one. Many of the enslaved women would have wept or pleaded. Claraara had simply accepted her fate with an equanimity that was, in its own way, more disquieting than tears. As dusk began to descend, Meline summoned her sons to the parlour. Phipe and Meline Darcy were handsome young men, yet their attractiveness possessed a delicate, almost effeminate quality fashionable among the Creole aristocracy. Phipe, the elder, had inherited his mother's grey eyes and his father's sensitive mouth. Henry was darker, with chestnut hair and a contemplative gaze that suggested a predilection for poetry over practical pursuits. "Mother," Philippe said as he entered the parlour, his voice carrying the slight lisp that had persisted since his youth. "You wish to see us?" Meline gestured for them to be seated on the silk-upholstered divan, while she remained standing, a posture that underscored her authority. "I have made arrangements for your education to proceed in a more practical direction," she began, choosing her words with deliberation. "Clara will be attending to your requirements from this point onward." Henry appeared perplexed. "Claraara? But mother, she already assists with our laundering." "Not those needs," Meline interrupted sharply. "You are men now, or you ought to be."
"It is time you learn to exercise the authority that is your birthright." Philippe's pale cheeks flushed as comprehension dawned. "Mother, surely you do not intend—" "I intend precisely what you surmise," Meline declared firmly. "Your father was excessively indulgent with both of you. The world will not be so accommodating."
"You must learn to seize what is rightfully yours, to command without hesitation or compunction." The two young men exchanged glances, a silent discourse that had developed between them since boyhood. Henri's romantic sensibility recoiled from the notion, while Philippe grappled with the expectations placed upon him as the heir to Belmont. "What if we refuse?" Henri inquired quietly, his voice barely audible. Meline's expression hardened. "Then you will prove yourselves unworthy of the Darcy name and all that your forefathers established. Claraara is property, nothing more. If you cannot master a slave, how can you possibly hope to command a plantation, a business, a wife?" The logic was stark but effective. Philip straightened his shoulders, attempting to summon the authority his mother demanded. "Very well, mother. If this is what you deem necessary." Henry remained silent, but the turmoil in his dark eyes was evident to anyone inclined to observe. Meline, however, perceived only what she wished to see: compliance. As the evening progressed and dinner was served in the grand dining hall, Claraara moved through her duties with her customary quiet competence. She served the soup course, replenished wine goblets, and cleared plates, all while maintaining the placid demeanor that had become her hallmark. But those who knew her well, Ezra, the cook, Mammy Rose, and the other domestic slaves, noticed subtle transformations. Her movements were more deliberate, her silences more profound, and there was a nascent intensity in her gaze that had not been present previously. After the meal, as the family dispersed to their respective chambers, Claraara ascended the grand staircase toward Phipe's room. The corridor was dimly illuminated by oil lamps, casting flickering shadows upon the walls, adorned with ancestral portraits of the Darcy lineage. Each painted countenance seemed to observe her progress with stern disapproval, as if prescient of the events about to unfold. She paused before Phipe's door, her hand poised to knock. For a fleeting moment, her serene facade faltered, revealing the young woman beneath, apprehensive and indignant, yet not vanquished. Then, regaining her composure, she rapped softly and entered upon being bidden. Phipe stood by the window, still attired in his evening wear, though his cravat was loosened. He turned as she entered, and she could discern the internal conflict etched upon his features, desire contending with conscience, authority struggling against his innate gentleness. "Claraara," he said softly, his voice imbued with uncertainty.
"My mother claims that we are." "I am aware of your mother's expectations," Claraara replied, closing the door behind her. "The question is, what are your expectations, Mr. Phipe?" The question hung between them, a silent challenge. Phipe had been schooled in command, but he had also been raised as a gentleman. The two imperatives seemed irreconcilable. "I do not know," he admitted, his honesty surprising them both.
"I have never, that is, I do not wish to force." Claraara stepped closer, her movements fluid and measured. "Your mother believes that taking what you desire will render you strong," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But perhaps true strength resides in discerning what to take and what to leave undisturbed." Philippe gazed at her, perceiving not merely a beautiful enslaved woman, but an individual possessing thoughts and sentiments as intricate as his own. It was a revelation that would prove more perilous to the established order than any overt act of defiance. "What would you have me do?" he asked, the question betraying more vulnerability than he had intended. Claraara offered a smile then, an expression so tender and knowing that it transformed her countenance entirely. "I would have you become the man you choose to be, not the man your mother dictates." And as the night deepened around Belmont Plantation, the initial seeds of change were sown. Meline Darcy slept soundly, confident that she had secured her family's future through the exertion of absolute power. But within Phipe's chamber, a different form of tutelage was commencing, one that would ultimately challenge the very tenets upon which the Darcy dynasty was founded. The established order was poised to face its most formidable trial, not from external adversaries or economic pressures, but from the quiet revolution of human conscience confronting its own moral inconsistencies. 3 weeks had elapsed since Meline's proclamation, and the atmosphere at Belmont had undergone a subtle yet profound transformation. The morning sun filtered through the Spanish moss draping the ancient oaks, casting dappled patterns across the plantation grounds where enslaved laborers moved through their daily tasks with the mechanical uniformity characteristic of generations of servitude. In the detached kitchen quarters, separated from the main residence by a covered walkway, Mammy Rose kneaded bread dough with more vigor than was necessary, her gnarled hands, calloused from decades of service, working the dough as if it were her accumulated frustrations made tangible. At 63 years of age, she had witnessed 3 generations of the Darcy family come and go, and she possessed the astute discernment that stemmed from a lifetime of observing the White family's secrets while remaining imperceptible to them. "That girl is playing with fire," she muttered to Ezra, who sat at the wooden table meticulously polishing silverware. "She walks around here as if she possesses some form of sway over those boys." Ezra looked up from the candlestick he was buffing, his aged eyes reflecting decades of accumulated sagacity. "Perhaps she does," he replied softly. "Perhaps she wields the only influence that truly counts, the ability to make them confront their true selves." "Cease your tongue," Mammy Rose hissed, casting a glance toward the doorway. "You know better than to utter such foolishness." That line of thinking could lead to us all being sold downriver. Yet, even as she spoke, both servants understood that something fundamental had shifted within the household. Claraara continued her duties with the same quiet efficiency, but a new quality permeated her presence, a subtle self-assurance that seemed to emanate from within. She no longer averted her gaze from the family members, and when she spoke, her words carried a weight that demanded attention. In the principal dwelling, Meline sat in her morning salon, perusing correspondence from her factory in New Orleans. Cotton prices remained stable, but disquieting reports surfaced concerning escalating abolitionist activities in the northern states. She frowned as she read of slave uprisings in other regions, making mental notes to enhance security measures at Belmont. A soft knock interrupted her reverie. "Enter," she called, anticipating the arrival of a household servant. Instead, Philippe entered the room, his appearance disheveled, in a manner that would have been considered scandalous in New Orleans society. His usually immaculate hair was tousled, his cravat askew, and dark circles beneath his eyes spoke of sleepless nights. "Philippe," Meline said, setting down her letters, "you appear unwell. Are you ill?" Her eldest son moved to the window, his gaze fixed upon the gardens, where Claraara could be seen hanging laundry on the line. "I must speak with you about Claraara," he stated without preamble. Meline's eyebrows ascended. "Oh, I trust she has been satisfactory in her duties." Philippe turned from the window, and Meline was struck by the intensity in his grey eyes. "She is remarkable," he said simply. "Intelligent, insightful, compassionate. Mother, did you know she can read, not just simple words, but actual literature? She has been self-educating from the books in Father's library." "That is quite enough," Meline declared sharply, rising from her chair. "I am unconcerned with her accomplishments. She is property, Phipe, nothing more. I hope you have not forgotten that fundamental truth." "How can I forget it when you constantly remind me?" Philippa retorted, his voice laced with a defiance Meline had never before encountered. "But what if we are mistaken?"
What if the system upon which we have built our lives is fundamentally flawed? The words hung in the air like blasphemy. Meline stared at her son as if he had suddenly developed horns. Philip Darcy, you will not utter such treasonous drivel within this house. Your father and grandfather established this plantation through diligent effort and a proper understanding of the natural order. Negroes are children incapable of self-governance.
It is our burden and our obligation to provide them with structure and purpose. Is it, Philippe challenged, or is it merely convenient for us to believe so? Claraara speaks 3 languages, Mother. She understands mathematics, philosophy, even music. How does that align with your theory of inherent inferiority? Meline's face flushed with anger and a hint of apprehension. You are being manipulated by a cunning slave who knows precisely how to appeal to your softer sentiments. This is precisely why I arranged for her to attend to you, to teach you to overcome such misplaced sympathies. The only lesson she has imparted is that I have been living a falsehood. Philippe stated quietly. We all have. Before Meline could respond, Henri appeared in the doorway, his face pale and drawn. Mother Fape, I need to speak with both of you. It concerns Claraara. Meline's heart sank as she observed the identical expression of inner conflict on Henri's face that had been troubling Phoebe. What about her? Henri entered the room fully, closing the door behind him. Last night, when she came to my chambers, we spoke. We truly spoke. She told me about her family, how they were separated when she was 8 years old. Her mother was sold to a plantation in Mississippi, her father to one in Alabama. She has not seen them since. Henri, Meline warned. You are allowing yourself to be swayed by pathetic narratives designed to... She was not attempting to elicit my sympathy, Henri interrupted, his voice possessing a newfound strength. She was merely answering my inquiries. I asked her about her life and she recounted it. Do you know what she said when I inquired if she detested us? Meline and Phipe waited in tense silence. She said she could not afford to hate us, for hatred would consume her soul, and her soul was the sole possession she truly owned. Then she asked me what I believed my soul was worth. The question seemed to reverberate within the elegant morning room, challenging the very foundations upon which the Darcy family had constructed their identity. Meline felt the ground beneath her feet begin to shift, yet she refused to acknowledge the seismic upheaval triggered by her own actions.
Enough, she declared firmly. You are both allowing yourselves to be manipulated by a slave who is clearly more astute than I initially gave her credit for. This ends now. Claraara will be reassigned to fieldwork immediately. No, Philippe stated, the word cutting through the air with unexpected force. Meline stared at her son in disbelief. I beg your pardon? No, Mother. You will not punish Claraara for our awakening to the truth.
If you send her to the fields, I shall follow her there. And I will join them, Henri added, moving to stand beside his brother. For the first time in her adult existence, Meline Darcy faced open defiance from her own offspring. The irony was not lost on her. In attempting to teach them mastery over others, she had somehow forfeited mastery over them. You are both being utterly unreasonable, she said, but her voice lacked its customary authority. This infatuation will pass. Claraara is a slave, and slaves exist to serve. That is the natural order of things. Whose nature? Philippe inquired. Yours, mine, or the nature that created us all as human beings with equal souls? The philosophical challenge proved too much for Meline to bear. She had been raised in a world where such questions were never posed, where the hierarchy of race and class was as immutable as the celestial movements. To question it was to question everything she had ever believed about herself and her position in the world. "Leave," she said quietly. "Both of you, depart from my sight before I utter something I shall regret." The two young men exchanged glances and exited the room, leaving Meline alone with her thoughts and her burgeoning dread that the world she knew was disintegrating around her. Meanwhile, in the slave quarters behind the main residence, Claraara sat on the steps of her modest cabin, mending a tear in one of Henri's shirts. The irony of the task was not lost on her. She was, in essence, repairing the very fabric of her oppressor's existence, while simultaneously unraveling the tapestry of his world-view. Mammy Rose approached, her heavy footsteps announcing her presence long before she spoke. "Child, you must exercise caution. The mistress has that look in her eye, the one that signifies trouble for individuals like us." Claraara looked up from her sewing, her serene expression unaltered. "I am aware, Mammy Rose, but I cannot unknow what I now know, and neither can they." "What are you speaking of, girl?" Claraara placed the garment down and turned her gaze towards the main residence, where she observed Phipe and Henri engaged in a profound discussion amidst the garden. "They are good souls, Mammy Rose. Despite the poison they've absorbed regarding their prescribed roles, they are fundamentally decent men, and good men cannot coexist with wickedness once its true nature is revealed." "You truly believe you can alter them?" Mammy Rose inquired with evident skepticism. "Transform the entire structure with your pleasant words and gentle demeanor." "I don't presume to change anything myself," Claraara admitted with straightforward honesty. "However, I believe they possess the capacity for self-transformation if they so choose, and within that choice resides genuine strength." As if conjured by their exchange, Phipe materialized at the periphery of the quarters occupied by the enslaved, his sudden appearance causing several to look up in surprise. It was an uncommon occurrence for the young master to venture into their domain. "Claraara," he called out in a subdued tone. "Might I have a word with you?" She rose with effortless poise, conscious of the attention focused on them both. "Certainly, Mr. Phipe." They proceeded together towards the venerable oak tree situated at the demarcation between the slave quarters and the primary estate grounds. Its immense trunk bore the marks of countless storms, yet it remained steadfast. "I've been contemplating your observations," Phipe commenced, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "Concerning the decision of what sort of man I aspire to be." "And what is your resolution?" Claraara asked, though her tone suggested she already grasped the answer. Phipe ceased his movement and turned to face her fully. "I've determined that I do not wish to be a man who claims ownership over other human beings. I have no desire to inherit a fortune amassed through suffering."
"I aim to surpass that legacy." Claraara studied his countenance, perceiving the sincerity in his expression alongside an underlying apprehension. "That is a perilous determination, Mr. Veep. Your mother will not comprehend. Your neighbors will shun you. You will forfeit all that you have been conditioned to anticipate." "Will I?" Phipe countered. "Or will I finally acquire something truly valuable, a clear conscience and the esteem of those whose opinions genuinely matter?" Before Claraara could offer a reply, the sound of approaching hoofbeats reached them. A rider was ascending the main thoroughfare at a gallop, dust pluming behind his urgent progress. Phipe and Claraara hastened towards the main house, arriving just as the rider dismounted. It was James Bogard, the plantation overseer, his face flushed with exertion and urgency. "Mrs. Darcy!" he exclaimed, as he bounded up the front steps. "Mrs. Darcy, you must hear this." Meline appeared on the veranda, her countenance composed despite the morning's emotional disarray. "What is it, Mr. Bogard?" "News from New Orleans. Mother, there has been another slave revolt in Virginia. Nat Turner's rebellion has emboldened others. The authorities are enacting severe measures, but there is chatter of abolitionists facilitating the escape of slaves to the north." Meline's face paled.
How imminent is this unrest? Difficult to ascertain, ma'am, but the word is disseminating. Some plantation owners are contemplating the sale of their most intellectually inclined slaves, those prone to causing disturbances. Philippe felt Claraara stiffen beside him, although her outward demeanour remained meticulously neutral. The implication was unambiguous. Slaves like Claraara, capable of literacy, critical thought, and inspiring others, were now perceived as particularly hazardous. "Thank you for the warning, Mr. Bogard," Meline stated. "Please increase patrols and ensure all slaves are accounted for each night." As the overseer departed, Meline's gaze settled upon Phipe and Claraara, standing together beneath the ancient oak. The sight instilled in her a profound dread, unrelated to distant uprisings and entirely connected to the internal upheaval occurring within her own family. The lines of conflict were being drawn, and Meline Darcy was beginning to grasp that the adversary might not be external instigators or rebellious bondsmen, but rather the very moral compass she had striven so diligently to suppress in her sons. The second act of this narrative was poised to commence, with stakes far greater than anyone had yet fathomed. The humid Louisiana atmosphere hung thick with the portents of a storm as August drew to its conclusion. For 6 weeks, the precarious equilibrium at Bellamont Plantation had been in flux, shifting like grains of sand beneath the encroaching tide, and Meline Darcy felt her carefully constructed world beginning to disintegrate. She stood in her late husband's study, now unequivocally hers, fixated on the letter that had arrived that morning from her brother-in-law in New Orleans. The intelligence it conveyed was both anticipated and profoundly disheartening. Whispers of the Darcy sons' unusual sympathies had reached the ears of New Orleans society. Invitations were being discreetly rescinded, business partnerships were being questioned, and the family's esteemed reputation, meticulously cultivated over 3 generations, was precariously balanced. "Damn them both," she murmured, crushing the letter within her fist. "Damn their tender hearts and their father's inherited gentleness." A soft rapping at the door interrupted her somber reflection.
"Enter," she called, expecting Ezra with the afternoon repast. Instead, Claraara entered the room, bearing a tea service upon a silver tray. Meline's eyes narrowed as she appraised the young woman who had inadvertently become the catalyst for her family's potential ruin. Claraara moved with her characteristic quiet grace. Yet there was a discernible difference about her now, a subtle aura of self-assurance that seemed to emanate from within. "I did not request tea," Meline stated icily. "No, mother," Claraara replied, placing the tray upon the mahogany desk, "but I surmised you might find it beneficial. You have appeared rather troubled of late." The sheer audacity of the statement left Meline breathless. "Troubled? You believe I am merely troubled?" Her voice escalated with each utterance. "You have dismantled my family.
Turned my sons against the very tenets they were raised to uphold, and you suggest I am simply troubled." Claraara poured the tea with steady hands, her serene expression unwavering. "I have not dismantled anything, Mrs. Darcy. I have simply existed as myself. If that existence has precipitated difficulties, perhaps the issue lies not with me, but with a societal framework that necessitates individuals suppressing their inherent humanity." Meline's hand instinctively moved towards the small pistol she kept within the desk drawer, a lady's firearm, pearl-handled and lethal. "How dare you address me in such a manner?"
"How dare you stand in my husband's study and presume to lecture me on the subject of humanity?" "Because someone must," Claraara stated quietly, meeting Meline's furious gaze without flinching. "And because your sons have discovered the fortitude to question their indoctrination, even if you have not." The words struck Meline with the force of physical blows.
She had spent months endeavoring to comprehend the unraveling of her carefully laid plans, how her simple objective of toughening her sons had inadvertently ignited their moral consciences. Now, observing Claraara's placid countenance, she finally confronted the unvarnished truth she had been evading. The fundamental issue was not Claraara's alleged cleverness or manipulative tendencies. The problem was that she was undeniably, unequivocally human.
"You believe you have triumphed?" Meline declared, her voice descending to a menacing whisper. "You envision having swayed my sons against me with your eloquent pronouncements and your tales of woe. However, you have overlooked a crucial element, Claraara. You remain my property. You are still rightfully mine." "Am I?" Claraara inquired, tilting her head slightly. "Or do I belong to myself as divinely ordained?" "Your sons have begun to perceive the reality, Mrs. Darcy."
The pertinent question is whether you possess the courage to acknowledge it as well. Before Madeline could formulate a response, the study door burst open and Phipe entered, his features alight with enthusiasm and resolve. Henri followed closely behind, both young men visibly agitated. "Mother," Philippe exclaimed breathlessly, "we must speak. Henri and I have reached a decision." Meline's heart plummeted as she recognized the unwavering determination etched on her sons' faces. "What decision?" Henri stepped forward, his usually placid demeanor replaced by an unexpected steely resolve. "We are emancipating the enslaved, Mother. All of them. We intend to liquidate the plantation and utilize the proceeds to facilitate their establishment of new lives as free individuals." The words struck Meline like a physical blow. She staggered backward, her grip tightening on the edge of the desk for support. "You cannot be serious. You cannot simply. This plantation has been a patrimony of our lineage for 3 generations. Your great-grandfather forged this domain from nothing. Forged it on the exploitation of abducted individuals," Philippe asserted firmly. "Built it upon a bedrock of human suffering. We shall no longer be complicit in that." Meline's gaze darted erratically between her sons and Claraara, who stood composedly beside the tea service, her expression inscrutable. "This is her machination," she accused, pointing an accusatory finger. "She has corrupted your minds with abolitionist rhetoric." "Claraara has never uttered a single word against slavery," Henri stated quietly. "She has never needed to. Her very existence serves as an indictment of the system that subjugates her." "My children," Meline spat, "naive youths who fail to grasp the harsh realities of the world. Without servitude, the economy of the South would crumble. Countless white families would face ruin. The Negroes themselves would perish without our guidance and protection. Faipe shook his head mournfully. Listen to your own words, mother. You are so entrenched in your perceived righteousness that you are blind to the iniquity before you. We are not safeguarding anyone. We are perpetuating a barbaric system that degrades all it touches, including ourselves. Meline felt the last vestiges of her control dissolving. Everything she had striven for, everything she had held as truth, was crumbling before her eyes. In a desperate act, she retrieved the pistol from the desk drawer, aiming it directly at Claraara. "Leave," she commanded, her voice trembling, with a potent mixture of rage and anguish. "All of you depart. Claraara, you have until dusk to vacate this plantation. If I find you here after dark, I will shoot you as a fugitive." Felipe moved protectively in front of Claraara, his face ashen but resolute. "If you intend to shoot her, you will have to shoot me first." Henri joined his brother, forming an unyielding phalanx. "And me." Meline stared at her sons, these young men she had nurtured, loved, and attempted to shape in her own image, and saw only strangers. They were prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice for a bondsman, to relinquish their inheritance for the sake of an ideal she could not comprehend. "You are not my sons," she whispered, the pistol quivering in her trembling hand. "My sons would never betray their own kin for a Negro." "We are precisely your sons," Faipe stated gently. "We are the men you raised us to be, even if we are not the men you desired us to become. Father instructed us to be compassionate, to be just, to defend those who could not defend themselves. We are honoring his memory, even as we disappoint you." The mention of Charles seemed to break something within Meline. She lowered the pistol, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "Your father was a good man," she conceded softly. "Too good for this world, perhaps. Too good for me." Claraara emerged from behind Faipe, her movement measured and deliberate. "Mrs. Darcy," she said quietly, "it is not too late. You could choose to embody the woman your husband believed you to be. You could choose to perceive us as he did, as individuals deserving of freedom and dignity." For a fleeting moment, Meline hesitated. She gazed at Claraara's face, truly observed it, and saw not an object of property, but a young woman endowed with aspirations, dreams, and fears mirroring her own. She perceived intelligence and benevolence, and a resilience that had endured years of bondage without succumbing. But the moment dissipated. The ingrained conditioning of a lifetime, the dread of losing all that was familiar, the terror of admitting a fundamental error in judgment. It was an insurmountable burden. "No," she declared, her voice hollow. "I cannot."
"I will not. This is my home, my existence, my world. I will not permit you to dismantle it." Philippe and Henri exchanged glances, a silent understanding passing between them. "Then we shall depart," Philippe stated simply. "Tonight, all of us." "You cannot," Meline protested. "You are my heirs. This plantation will one day be yours." "We have no desire for it," Henri affirmed firmly.
"We will forge our own paths in the world, with unblemished integrity and clear consciences." Indeed, as the three young individuals turned to exit, Meline called out desperately, "Where will you go? What will you do? You possess no financial resources, no connections beyond the confines of Louisiana society." Philippe paused at the threshold. "We will journey north to the Free States. We will labor. We will establish new lives and assist others in doing the same." You will be pariahs, Meline warned. Outcasts rejected by any respectable society. Claraara spoke for the first time since the confrontation had commenced. Perhaps it is time to redefine respectable society, Mrs. Darcy, one predicated on character rather than pigmentation, on humanity rather than hierarchy. As they departed the study, Meline collapsed into her husband's armchair, the pistols slipping from her nerveless fingers to clatter upon the floor. Beyond the walls, she could discern the persistent sounds of the plantation's daily operations, enslaved individuals toiling in the fields, overseers issuing commands, the ceaseless cycle of subjugation and defiance that had defined her existence for as long as she could recall. Yet, this familiar world now felt hollow, devoid of meaning. Her sons were gone, not merely in physical absence, but in spirit. They had elected a divergent course, one that led away from all that she had endeavored to instill in them. As the sun began its descent over the Louisiana Delta, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Meline Darcy remained alone in her desolate mansion, enveloped by the spectral presence of her forebears and the oppressive weight of her decisions. She had attempted to preserve her world by fortifying her sons' hearts. However, in doing so, she had alienated them to the very compassion she had sought to obliterate. The established order was succumbing, and she was its solitary, mournful sentinel. 6 months had elapsed since that pivotal evening when Philippe, Henri, and Claraara had vanished into the Louisiana night, irrevocably altering Belmont Plantation. The winter of 1848 proved to be severe, not solely in terms of climatic conditions, but in the stark reality of consequences that descended upon the once grand estate like a funereal shroud. Meline Darcy stood by the same window from which she had initially conceived her calamitous strategy. Yet the woman now gazing out at the frost-covered fields bore little resemblance to the resolute widow of months prior. Her auburn hair had prematurely turned grey. Her countenance was gaunt, a testament to sleepless nights and a diminished appetite, and her formerly proud posture had yielded to a stooped bearing that spoke of profound defeat. The plantation was in decline. Without her sons to assume its stewardship, and with the ignominy of their abolitionist sympathies having permeated Louisiana society, Meline found herself increasingly marginalized. Business associates had withdrawn their patronage. Neighboring plantation proprietors avoided her, and even the enslaved individuals seemed to sense the shift in the atmosphere, working with diminished zeal, their hushed conversations hinting at freedom in the north. Ezra entered the study, carrying the morning correspondence, his aged hands exhibiting a tremor more pronounced than usual. At 70 years of age, he had dedicated his entire existence to the Darcy family, and the uncertainty surrounding the plantation's future weighed heavily upon his spirit. "Any news?" Meline inquired without turning from the window, although both understood the query's underlying meaning. "No, Mother," Ezra replied softly. "No missives from the young masters." Meline nodded, unsurprised, yet undeniably disappointed. She had penned numerous letters to Phipe and Henri, dispatching them to every significant urban centre in the north, yet had received no replies. It was as if her sons had evaporated from the earth, carrying Claraara with them into a world she could neither comprehend nor navigate. "There is, however, something else," Ezra continued hesitantly. "A visitor. He states he is from the bank in New Orleans." Meline's heart sank. She had anticipated this visit for weeks, ever since the cotton harvest had failed to meet its projected yields, and the plantation's financial obligations had begun to escalate. "Send him in," she commanded, finally turning from the window to confront whatever tidings awaited her. The banker, a slender, anxious man named Thibodeau, had clearly drawn the shortest straw when it came to delivering distressing information to distressed landowners. He clutched his hat in his hands as he entered the study, his eyes darting around the room as if seeking an avenue of escape. "Mrs. Darcy," he began, his tone apologetic yet firm. "I fear I bring some unwelcome news concerning your accounts." "How much time do I have?" Meline inquired, cutting directly to the crux of the matter. Thibodeau blinked in surprise at her directness. "Well, that is to say, the bank is prepared to extend your credit for an additional 3 months, provided you can present a viable repayment plan. And if I cannot," he paused, "then I'm afraid we will have no recourse but to initiate foreclosure proceedings on the property. The plantation would be auctioned to satisfy your outstanding debts." Meline nodded slowly, having anticipated this outcome.
"And the enslaved individuals," she added, her voice barely a whisper. "They too will be sold, of course, likely separately to maximize returns for creditors." The words struck her like a physical blow. She contemplated Ezra, who had served her family with unwavering loyalty for 7 decades, and Mammy Rose, who had nursed her sons through their childhood ailments, and the field hands who had cultivated the Darcy lands for generations.
They would all be dispersed to the winds, families sundered, lives shattered. For the first time since her son's departure, Meline truly comprehended the message Philippe and Henri had striven to convey. The system she had so vehemently defended was not merely morally reprehensible, it was inherently unstable, founded upon a bedrock of human suffering that could collapse at any given moment. After the banker departed, Meline remained alone in the study, her gaze fixed upon the portrait of her late husband adorning the wall above the fireplace. Charles Darcy looked down upon her with benevolent eyes, and she found herself pondering his hypothetical actions in her predicament. "You were always too gentle for this world," she murmured to the painting. "But perhaps that was your strength, not your deficiency." A soft rap interrupted her reverie. "Enter," she called, expecting Ezra. Instead, Mammy Rose entered the room, her substantial frame filling the doorway. The elderly cook had never before entered the master's study uninvited, and her presence now signaled the extraordinary circumstances they all faced. "Begging your pardon, Mrs. Darcy," Mammy Rose stated, her voice respectful yet resolute. "But I overheard the banker's visit. The entire quarters is discussing what is to become of us." Meline regarded the woman who had been a constant fixture in her life for over 2 decades.
"I am sorry, Rose. I have failed you all." "No, ma'am," Mammy Rose affirmed firmly. "You have not failed us. You were merely attempting to cling to something that was already fractured. But perhaps it is not too late to rectify matters." "What do you mean?" Mammy Rose stepped closer, her dark eyes alight with purpose. "I mean, perhaps you could do what your sons intended to do. Free us, all of us, before the bank seizes everything." Meline stared at the older woman in astonishment. "Free you?" "Rose, I lack the financial means to assist you in establishing new lives. I can scarcely afford provisions." "We do not require your funds, Mrs. Darcy. We simply require our papers, our freedom papers. Most of us have kin in the north, individuals who escaped or were emancipated. We can manage our own livelihoods if we are granted the legal right to do so." The proposition was both terrifying and liberating.
Meline had spent her entire adult life under the conviction that the enslaved were dependent upon her for every necessity: sustenance, shelter, purpose. The notion that they might be capable of self-sufficiency, of building their own futures, challenged the very foundations of her ingrained beliefs. "The neighbors would never forgive me," Meline said weakly. "I would be utterly ostracized." "You already are," Mammy Rose pointed out gently. "You might as well be ostracized for doing what is right, rather than for doing what is wrong." That evening, Meline ventured into the slave quarters, a place she had not visited in years. She had consistently observed this section of the plantation from a distance, viewing it as an essential yet unappealing component of its operation. As she wandered through the cramped living quarters where families resided in close proximity, she began to grasp the human toll of her privileged existence. Little ones frolicked in the dust between the dwellings, their peals of laughter a cheerful melody against the deepening twilight. Women sat on their stoops occupied with mending garments or preparing modest meals over open hearths. Men returned from their labors in the fields, their countenances etched with fatigue, yet they still managed to greet their families with smiles. These were not the simple souls of childlike dependence she had been conditioned to perceive, but intricate individuals possessing their own aspirations, desires, and connections. Within the confines of their servitude, they had forged a collective, cultivating purpose and delight, despite their circumstances. At the farthest extremity of the settlement, she discovered Ezra resting on his porch, meticulously shaping a small wooden plaything for a child. He looked up as she approached, his time-worn features registering surprise at her appearance. "Mistress Darcy," he murmured, beginning to stand. "Is there something you require?" "Please, sit, Ezra," she responded with gentle persuasion. "I wished to inquire about something. If you were unbound, truly liberated, what path would you choose to follow?" The elder gentleman's eyes widened at the unexpected query. I truly am uncertain, ma'am."
"I've not truly allowed myself to contemplate such matters." "Consider it now," Meline prompted. "If you could journey anywhere, engage in any pursuit, what would bring you contentment?" Ezra remained silent for a considerable interval, his gnarled hands continuing their work on the piece of wood. "I have a daughter," he revealed at length. "She was taken from me when she was merely 16. The last I heard, she was in Philadelphia, employed as a seamstress." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "If I were free, if I were unfettered, I would yearn to see her once more, to meet my grandchildren." Meline felt a prickling of tears at the corners of her eyes. "What is her name?" "Sarah," Ezra replied softly. "Sarah Johnson, she calls herself now. She has found herself a good husband, from what I understand, a free man." "How do you possess this knowledge?" Ezra appeared discomfited. "There are means of receiving tidings, ma'am. The Underground Railroad, they term it. Individuals assisting folks in locating their kin, relaying messages. The revelation that an entire clandestine network of communication and aid operated directly beneath her awareness constituted yet another jolt to Meline's understanding of the world. The enslaved were not passive recipients of benevolence awaiting direction from their white counterparts. They were active participants in shaping their own destinies, striving for liberty despite every impediment placed in their path. Over the subsequent days, Meline found herself engaging in analogous dialogues with other individuals held in bondage on the plantation. She learned of families sundered by transactions, of aspirations postponed but not relinquished, of an indomitable spirit and inherent dignity that had endured despite decades of subjugation. The more she absorbed,
the more she comprehended what her sons had endeavored to convey to her. The institution of slavery did not merely diminish the humanity of those subjected to it, it also degraded those who enslaved them, compelling them to disregard the evident personhood of the individuals they presumed to possess. On a frigid morning in February, precisely 7 months after Philippe and Henri had departed Bel Air, Meline reached a definitive conclusion. She convened all the enslaved individuals in the central courtyard and stood before them, a sheaf of legal documents in her grasp.
"I have an announcement for all of you," she commenced, her voice carrying clearly in the crisp air. "Effective today, you are all liberated. I have had the requisite papers drawn up in New Orleans. You are no longer chattel, but free men and women, vested with the right to travel wherever you choose and to reside as you see fit." And profound silence descended in the aftermath. Some of the enslaved regarded her with skepticism, as if anticipating a cruel deception. Others began to weep openly.
A few fell to their knees in supplication. "I recognize that this act cannot erase the injustices you have endured," Meline continued, her own voice faltering with emotion. "I am aware that it cannot restore the years that were stolen from you, nor reunite you with family members who were sold away. However, it represents a commencement. It offers an opportunity to construct the lives you aspire to for yourselves." Ezra stepped forward, tears coursing down his weathered cheeks.
"Mistress Darcy," he articulated, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why? Why now?" Meline gazed upon the faces encircling her, countenances she had observed daily for years, yet had never truly perceived until this moment. "Because my sons were correct," she stated plainly. "Because you are deserving of freedom."
"Because it aligns with my late husband's wishes, and because it is the morally upright course of action." In the weeks that ensued, the emancipated individuals of Belmont Plantation began to disperse. Some journeyed northward to rejoin family members, others remained in Louisiana, relocating to New Orleans or other urban centers where they could secure employment for wages. A select few, such as Mamie Rose, opted to remain at the plantation temporarily to assist Meline in preparing for the inevitable auction. Ezra was among those who departed for the north, carrying his emancipation papers and a letter of recommendation that Meline had penned for him. On the day of his departure, he came to bid farewell, his meager belongings packed in a small satchel.
"I wish for you to understand," he said, standing in the entryway of the study where he had served for so many years, "that notwithstanding all, there was benevolence within this household. Your husband was a good man, and your sons, they possess his spirit." "And what of me?" Ezra inquired. "Do I share in his spirit?" The elder gentleman smiled, the expression transforming his weathered visage. "You liberated us, did you not? That required more fortitude than anything Master Charles ever exhibited."
He was born with inherent goodness. You made a conscious choice to cultivate virtue. That is a more arduous undertaking, and perhaps of greater worth. Following Ezra's departure, Meline found herself genuinely solitary for the initial instance in her existence. The grand domicile resonated with an absence, its chambers too expansive and too hushed for a single occupant. Yet, within the quietude, she began to discern a subtle resonance she had previously overlooked, the voice of her own conscience, at last unfettered to express itself. 3 weeks hence, a correspondence arrived that irrevocably altered her circumstances. It bore a postmark from Philadelphia and was inscribed in a hand she recognized instantaneously. With trembling digits, Meline broke the seal of the envelope and perused its contents. "Dearest Mother, we have received word through mutual acquaintances of your decision to emancipate the enslaved individuals at Belmont. We are unable to adequately articulate our profound pride in your valor and your moral compass. We comprehend that this could not have been a facile choice, and we are cognizant of the considerable personal cost you have incurred. We are writing to extend an invitation for you to join us in Philadelphia, where we have established a modest yet expanding enterprise dedicated to assisting former slaves in reuniting with their families and forging new lives. Claraara has proven to be an invaluable asset in this endeavor, as her education and gentle demeanor have effectively put at ease apprehensive individuals. We are aware that we caused you disappointment by our departure as we did, and we acknowledge that our choices have entailed significant sacrifices on your part. However, we hold the hope that in time we might collaboratively cultivate something novel, a familial bond predicated not upon the subjugation of others, but upon affection, mutual esteem, and a shared objective. Should you be inclined to contemplate a new existence, a fresh commencement, we would welcome you with open arms. There is substantial work to be accomplished in the pursuit of liberty, and your strength and intellect would be invaluable in this struggle, with all our affection and respect. Philippe and Henri. P.S. Claraara has requested that we convey her forgiveness to you and her hope that you may find it within yourself to forgive yourself. She asserts that absolution is invariably attainable for those sufficiently courageous to seek it. Meline read the letter, a threefold repetition, before setting it down upon the desk. Beyond the windows, she could discern the sounds of preparations for the auction. Men meticulously cataloguing furnishings, measuring rooms poised to divest the remnants of the Darcy legacy. Yet for the first time in many months, Meline experienced a sensation she had nearly forgotten: hope. She retrieved her pen and commenced to compose her reply. "My dearest sons, yes, I shall come. I shall assist. I shall endeavor to become the woman your father envisioned me to be, and the mother you justly deserve. I cannot undo the past, but perhaps I can contribute to the construction of a more promising future. Perhaps we can all discover redemption in the act of liberating others."
Your devoted mother, Madeline. As she affixed the seal to the missive, Meline cast another glance at her husband's portrait. Charles Darcy appeared to be regarding her with a benevolent smile, his kind eyes suffused with approval and affection. The old order was transitioning, but a new era was dawning. And for the first time in her life, Meline Darcy was prepared to actively participate in constructing something superior to what had preceded it.
The price of liberation, she had come to understand, was not merely the relinquishment of what one believed to be possession, but the fortitude to acknowledge one's errors. It was a cost she was at last willing to bear. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, spring of 1850. The modest office situated on Chestnut Street bore no outward indication of the transformative endeavors taking place within its unpretentious confines. To casual observers, it presented as merely another commercial establishment in the vibrant commercial heart of Philadelphia. However, within the precincts of the Freedom Foundation, as Philippe, Henri, and Claraara had christened their organization, lives were being quietly reshaped, one family at a time. Meline Darcy was seated at a functional wooden desk, her once refined hands now bearing ink stains from prolonged periods of correspondence. At 42 years of age, she appeared older than her years, yet a certain radiance graced her countenance, a quality absent during her tenure as mistress of Bellamont. Her hair, now entirely silver, was drawn back in a practical coiffure, and she wore a simple grey garment that would have caused consternation among her former social set. "Mistress Darcy," Claraara called from across the room, where she was assisting a young woman with the completion of official documents. We have received confirmation from the operative in Baltimore. The Johnson family has reached Canada without incident. Meline raised her gaze from the letter she was composing and offered a smile, a genuine expression of joy that illuminated her features. Remarkable tidings that brings the total of families we have aided in their reunification this year to 37. The work was fraught with peril and frequently heart-wrenching. They facilitated the reunion of former slaves with family members separated years or decades prior, provided legal counsel to those seeking to solidify their freedom in the courts, and, on occasion, lent assistance to the more covert operations of the Underground Railroad. It was both unlawful and socially prescribed, yet undeniably essential. Philippe entered the office carrying a stack of newspapers, his expression somber. "The Fugitive Slave Act has been enacted," he announced, placing the papers on the central table. "It is now official. Even free states are mandated to return escaped enslaved individuals to their proprietors." A hush fell over the room as the implications gradually registered. The newly established federal legislation signified that their mission had escalated in danger, and that previously secure sanctuaries in the north were no longer assured. Henri looked up from the financial ledgers he was reviewing. "What does this signify for our families residing in Philadelphia, for individuals such as the Johnsons?" "It signifies that we adapt," Claraara declared with firm resolve, her voice imbued with the same quiet strength that had once challenged the very foundations of Belmont Plantation. "It means we discover novel methodologies of assistance, new routes to safety, and innovative strategies of opposition." Meline rose and moved towards the window, observing the bustling thoroughfare below. "It also signifies that a greater number of individuals will commence to perceive the genuine countenance of enslavement," she mused thoughtfully. "When citizens of the North are compelled to participate in the apprehension and repatriation of human beings, when they witness families being torn asunder on their own doorsteps, perhaps more will lend their support to our cause." This proved to be a prescient observation. The Fugitive Slave Act would in fact galvanize Northern opposition to slavery with a potency that decades of abolitionist rhetoric had failed to achieve. A rap at the door interrupted their discourse. Philippe opened it to reveal Ezra, now 73 years of age, yet still remarkably spry, his face beaming with elation. Behind him stood a woman in her 30s, her eyes kind and her hands calloused. Clearly a working individual, yet attired in the unpretentious finery of one commemorating a special occasion. "Mistress Darcy," Ezra exclaimed, his voice thick with emotion, "I wish for you to meet my daughter, Sarah." Meline felt tears welling in her eyes as she witnessed the reunion she had helped facilitate. Sarah Johnson, for she had indeed adopted her husband's surname, embraced her father with a tenderness that spoke volumes of years of separation and the miraculous gift of being reunited. "Thank you," Sarah expressed, turning to address the assembled company. "All of you, my father has recounted your deeds, how you have aided so many families in finding each other once more. I can never adequately repay such a profound gift." "Your liberty is sufficient recompense," Meline replied, her words carrying sincere conviction. "Your happiness, the future of your family, that is all the reward we seek." As the afternoon progressed, additional visitors arrived. Former enslaved persons seeking aid in locating absent family members, free black individuals requiring legal representation, and occasionally, white allies offering support or pertinent information. The office buzzed with activity, a nexus of hope in a world still largely defined by systemic oppression. Near the hour of closing, as the last visitors departed and the staff commenced the task of organizing documents for the following day, Claraara approached Meline's desk. "I wish to express my gratitude," Claraara stated quietly, "for the letter you penned to the newspaper last week. Your testimony regarding life on a plantation, originating from someone who herself owned enslaved individuals, carries a weight that our words could never achieve." Meline looked up from her correspondence. "It was the least I could do. I spent years perpetuating falsehoods about the natural order and the contentment of enslaved people. If my voice can now serve the truth, then perhaps some good can emerge from all those years of willful blindness." Claraara took a seat in the chair opposite the desk, her expression contemplative. "Do you ever experience regret, relinquishing your former existence, your standing in society?" Meline considered the question with earnestness. "I regret the years I squandered living a deception," she declared at length.
"I regret the suffering I inflicted, the opportunities for kindness I missed, but regret forsaking that life? Never. I sleep more soundly now than I ever did as the mistress of Bellemont. And your sons, are you proud of the men they have become?" A smile graced Meline's features as she surveyed the room where Philippe and Henri were assisting an elderly gentleman in composing a letter to relatives residing in Canada. "They are superior men to what I ever dared to hope they might be."
They chose conscience over comfort, justice over privilege. They are their father's sons in the most commendable sense. As evening descended upon Philadelphia, the small staff of the Freedom Foundation prepared to conclude their day's work. However, their efforts would persist throughout the night as conductors on the Underground Railroad guided desperate families toward liberty. As correspondence conveyed messages between separated loved ones, and as the silent revolution of human conscience continued its proliferation, outside the gas lamps flickered upon the cobblestone streets, illuminating a city that itself served as a symbol of freedom and potential. But within the modest office on Chestnut Street, a different kind of light blazed, the light of redemption, of second chances, and of an unshakable conviction that individuals could undergo transformation, that established systems could be challenged, and that love could ultimately triumph over animosity. Meline gathered her shawl and prepared to walk to the small boarding house where she now resided, a significant departure from the opulent mansion of her past, yet immeasurably more authentic. As she reached the doorway, she paused to cast a final glance back at the office that had become the central focus of her life's work. On the wall hung a simple wooden plaque, meticulously carved by Philippe, bearing words that had evolved into their unofficial guiding principle. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Below it, almost concealed in the shadows, was a small daguerreotype, a photograph of the four of them taken the preceding Christmas. Meline, Philippe, Henri, and Claraara stood together, not as master and servants, not as owner and property, but as a family, as equals, as human beings united in a common purpose. The former world of Bellemont Plantation had vanished irrevocably, swept away by the inexorable currents of history and the courage of those who dared to envision a superior alternative. In its stead, something new was burgeoning, still delicate and confronting formidable challenges, yet rooted in truth rather than deceit, in love rather than fear. As Meline stepped out into the Philadelphia evening, she carried with her the profound understanding that redemption was indeed attainable, that individuals were capable of change, and that often the most significant victories stemmed not from clinging to authority, but from possessing the courage to relinquish it. The seeds of change sown in the fertile ground of awakened conscience were beginning to blossom. And though the full fruition of this transformation lay years in the future, the promise of liberty, genuine freedom for all, had never appeared more palpable or more within reach. The most deeply guarded secret of Belmont Plantation had been transmuted into the most luminous hope for a new generation. And within this transformation lay the irrefutable proof that no system of oppression, however deeply entrenched, could withstand the inherent power of human beings choosing to perceive one another as they truly were, children of the same divine creator, deserving of equal dignity and capable of profound love. The narrative of the Darcy family was drawing to a close, but the grand saga of freedom was only just commencing. If this chronicle of redemption and defiance resonated with you, we implore you to subscribe to our channel and disseminate it among those who believe in the capacity of human conscience to surmount even the most somber chapters of our collective past. Collectively, we can ensure that these accounts of valor and transformation continue to inspire subsequent generations to prioritize justice over comfort and love over apprehension. What were your reflections on Meline's transformation from an enslaver to an advocate? Share your insights in the comment section below and inform us of any other historical narratives of change you would like to see explored. Kindly remember, the trajectory of the moral universe may be lengthy, but each of us possesses the agency to contribute to its inclination toward justice.